do instead? You have ideas for amnesty that would work? What are they? You feel like that some speech is tinged by racism? Show me where. Let's discuss it. Let's talk about it. And let's equally learn from the process. Or you can just burn crap. Either way, it's up to you. We're going to take a quick break here, folks, but when we come back, we have a quick discussion of the first 100 days-ish of Donald Trump, what progress was made, what opposition has come up, what did we learn, what did we not learn, what is the state of the two parties that we have right now, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Gene Baradelli, Behind Enemy Lines, we'll be back right after these brief words. If you're a long-time listener of the show, or maybe this is your first time listening, you can probably tell that me and the gang here, we like to have our share of fun, whether it's on or off the air. We talk about 2-drink minimum radio and no medication Wednesdays or whatever day it may be. That's why when we found the people at Less Government, More Fun, we knew it was a match made in heaven with this show. Folks, we live in a time where government is out of hand. Our founding fathers did not intend government to be all-consuming in all parts of our lives. That's why we are telling you to go to lessgovmorefun.com, check out the website, check out the swag. What the people want is less government, more fun. Pass it on, make it happen.
Who might you save?
Your mother, your father, your husband, uncle, aunt, son.
Learn FAST, F-A-S-T, the sudden signs of a stroke, and you could save.
Your friend, teacher, boss.
F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. T, time to call 911. F-A-S-T. That's F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. T, time to call 911. The sooner they get to the hospital, the sooner they'll get treatment. And that can make a remarkable difference in the recovery of
your neighbor, the waiter, grandmother, grandfather.
So learn FAST, the sudden signs of a stroke, then pass it on, because you never know who might save you.
Your wife, your colleague.
Spot a stroke fast. Visit strokeassociation.org, brought to you by the American Stroke Association and the Ad Council.
Behind Enemy Lines Radio is all about being right. No, seriously, it is. If you ever listen to Russ Gallo or me go back and forth on some issue, we always want to make sure that we remember who said what and when we said it. That's why we go to goonrecord.com. It's a brand new social media website. Challenge people on what they believe, whether it's in politics, sports, entertainment, finance, whatever. There's a category for you at goonrecord.com. Check it out right now. Tell us, what do you stand for? It's time for you to go on record. Behind Enemy Lines. Back on the air. Gene Baradelli, back behind Enemy Lines. You know, folks, it feels like only yesterday that we were celebrating this miraculous victory of President Donald Trump over the dastardly and inconceivably horrible Hillary Clinton. And we celebrated. And we had an inauguration. And then we marveled at the executive orders and new legislation and the resistance by Democrats. These first 100 days, this meaningful and meaningless benchmark that everyone in the media seems to talk about. Fox has a whole show called The First 100 Days. Let's take a look at these 100 days and see what we've learned, what we got done, and what's to come. Let's start talking about what we learned. Well, we learned that it's going to be a very long road to obtaining any type of achievement on the Trump agenda. It's going to be very hard to do because you have this resistance out there, quote unquote, that is basically no for the sake of no. The exact thing that Democrats accuse Republicans of doing to President Obama is what they're doing right now. Party of no, resistance, bad man, all that kind of nonsense and garbage. But here's the fundamental difference between the two. First, Republicans allowed President Obama to have the cabinet he wanted. Democrats in the first 100 days did everything they could to grind the administration to a standstill, and primarily in the beginning, stopped the president from having his cabinet. Now, you just won an election. You just proved your worthiness to assume the presidency. And now the opposition party is just not showing up to committee hearings in order to have them not have quorum to confirm cabinet appointments? Come on, that's Bush League. No offense to the Bush family. But that's what it is. It's baby crap. It's patronizing nonsense that's playing to a base that is still to this day licking their wounds over the worst candidate in their history. Folks, it still is so frustrating to see an opposition party that is not willing to come to a table to discuss things, major policies and concerns, like adults. And the way they started out with cabinet appointments on the Democratic side, absolutely disgusting. It all came to a head with the appointment of now Justice Neil Gorsuch. And, this is probably the crowning achievement, in my opinion, of the Donald Trump presidency thus far. Selecting Neil Gorsuch basically rewarded me for my vote. Like many of you out there, and many of my friends as well, I voted for Donald Trump primarily because I did not want Hillary Clinton appointing 2, 3, possibly 4 justices in her presidency, fundamentally altering the balance of the Supreme Court. That's why I voted for Donald Trump. He pledged to pick a justice from a list that he helped develop along with Heritage Foundation of conservative jurists that would do honor to the practice of law. And he kept that promise. And he picked Neil Gorsuch. And the Democrats resisted a man they virtually unanimously approved a decade prior. The man had over 2,700 decisions written, 97% of them with majority. Virtually none of them overturned, a handful maybe at the most. I think it was 2, possibly. A brilliant writer, by all accounts. A brilliant jurist, by all accounts. Fair, calling balls and strikes, interpreting the law as written, not as he wishes it to be. Deciding cases in ways that he did not like himself, because that's what the law called for. And Al Franken and Senator Feinstein had the temerity to argue legal ethics and jurisprudence with him. It was disgusting to see, folks. The fool that the Democrats made themselves, bending over backwards, trying to find something wrong with Neil Gorsuch, Justice Gorsuch, and ultimately finding nothing but their own ruination when Mitch McConnell invoked the so-called nuclear option, allowing for debate to be cut off with a simple majority up-down vote. Harry Reid would be proud as punch to see what he hath wrought on the U.S. Senate. November 21st, 2013, folks, remember that date, because that's the date that Harry Reid used the nuclear option for many of President Obama's lower-level appointments. You now reap what you sow, Democrats. And that was a crowning achievement of the first 100 days, this meaningful yet meaningless benchmark. Let's talk about something that wasn't so good, and that was the failure of the Trump administration and the House Republicans to come up with a coherent sentence when it came to health care, when it came to repealing and replacing Obamacare. Folks, one thing we learned is that the Republican Party is not a monolith. There are many factions within the party when it comes to many different issues whereby everyone wants to have a say at the table. You have the Freedom Caucus, Tea Party conservatives, you have, House leadership, you have the Trump administration, all these different moving parts that couldn't come together on health care, that put together legislation that really did not make a lot of sense when it came to repealing and replacing Obamacare. It may have been cost effective in some ways, but it definitely was not what was promised to the American people. And kudos to the Freedom Caucus for killing that in effect and refusing to go along to get along. Is healthcare dead? We shall see in the next coming days. But one thing is for sure, that was not a great moment for the Trump presidency, basically because Trump tried to throw his weight around with healthcare, threatening people to go against this idea of repeal and replace in the way that they wanted to do it, instead of scaling it back and doing a full version of it, instead of just repealing it and then replacing it later on. He wanted to have an up-down vote on a certain deadline. He put his deadline out there. Didn't work. And then he decided to blame conservatives in the Freedom Caucus for it not working. Not the best look for the Trump administration. Was not very happy with that at all. Now we'll see what happens with this tax reform bill and tax reform policy that's going to be coming out very soon. Who knows about that? I'm looking forward to seeing it. I know many of you are as well. Of course, the wall, the border wall, has not come to fruition yet. Maybe Ted Cruz's El Chapo bill and trying to take the C's money from him and put it towards the wall will be viewed upon favorably. Who knows? I thought it's kind of a nice way to spin that wall project. But make no mistake, on immigration, the Trump administration accomplished a lot. Look at the numbers. The drastic decrease in border crossings over the first few months of the administration. Somewhere over 80%, possibly even over 90%. That's an accomplishment. And that's got to feel good for people on the border. And it's got to feel good for voters who, again, a promise kept. Trump has endeavored to really take immigration reform to the next level. And there have been some stumbles along the way. The travel ban is one of those stumbles. The Sanctuary Cities executive order may be one of those stumbles, both of which are being challenged in court right now. So we'll see what happens with those and the legalities over it. But make no mistake, this is a president who takes our immigration issues very, very seriously. And that's good to see. That's encouraging to see. And you can call President Trump the president of the broad stroke, because it seems like the president has a goal in mind. May not necessarily know how in the weeds to get there, all the wonkiness and all that about how to get there. Will indeed stumble in trying to get there, but is intended to do what he said he was going to do on the campaign trail. And you have to give props for that. Another great moment for the Trump administration in the first 100 days, the speech he gave before the joint session of Congress. Truly a moment where Donald Trump first looked presidential. Go back and watch that speech again, and you'll be awe-inspired. I know that I was pumped when I heard that whole speech. Van Jones on CNN was talking about how this became the moment that Donald Trump became everyone's president. Definitely a great moment to go back and relive. Set the tone for what the president wants to accomplish. Did he get to do it all in the first 100 days? No. Show me a president that did on this meaningful yet meaningless benchmark. So that's a lot of what we learned and a lot of what we saw. Now, what is there to expect? Obviously, more resistance from the Democrats. And if we can just take a moment, we took our shot at the Republicans, take a shot at the Democrats now. When the leaders of your party are down to Elizabeth Warren and Al Franken, y'all got problems. Elizabeth Warren, whose book that recently came out, I guess is her bid to be president in 2020, has been labeled by the Washington Post of all places as condescending and tone deaf. That speaks a lot for the arrogance of Elizabeth Warren, and we've seen that arrogance in action in Congress, especially when she was admonished on the floor of the Senate for disparaging Jeff Sessions. And Al Franken, we touched on this earlier before, but for this man to have the temerity to think that he can go toe-to-toe and wit for wit with one of the most brilliant jurists in our nation, Neil Gorsuch. It was just laughable and embarrassing to see what Democrats have become. Dianne Feinstein, the same thing when she asked for certain cases. Remember this whole big guy versus little guy debate that they were having during the